Hi, and welcome to On and Off, our podcast covering the on-premise and off-premise beverage alcohol industry. I'm Kyle Swartz, editor of Beverage Dynamics magazine.
And I'm Christina Skybo, trade managing editor with the Beverage Information Group. In this episode, we're joined by Xander Shepherd, co-founder of the cannabis beverage brand Artet. We're going to talk about the THC drinks industry and what the recent federal legislation means for the business. Xander, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We should probably start with the thorny topic at hand these days for legal THC, and that is the changes in the 2018 Farm Bill, which could potentially negatively affect the industry by effectively banning hemp-derived THC products. Can you tell us a little bit about what these changes are and how you think they'll affect the industry?
Yeah, and look, I think the devil's in the details or whatever, and certainly on face you can look at what has transpired and refer to it effectively as a ban. I think if we're being fair, which is probably more generous than many would feel is necessary, but if we're being fair to the information or the language that was put into amending the federal funding bill, where this language kind of got snuck in, it limits the potency of a product at 0.4 milligrams of THC, which is, if we want to, again, be sort of mindful here, a number larger than zero, right? So in effect, there is some amount of THC permitted in finished products. Now, that is being extremely generous and extremely flexible in the sort of mental sort of thinking about all of this. The reality is that at 0.4 milligrams, it is effectively so low that no one would theoretically feel anything, which does challenge many of the products, many of the brands, many of the experiences, many of the sort of end benefits that people seek in consumption of THC goods. So yes, in many ways, there is a legitimate reckoning happening in terms of the viability of this category and these products, not because people don't want them, not because consumers aren't demanding them, but because there are questions around who gets to participate in this category and industry, who gets to thrive and benefit on the commerce side of this category and industry. And again, I think to be very direct and upfront about it, how to do so safely, consistently, and on an even playing field from a regulatory standpoint. So if we do nothing as an industry on November 13th, 2026, this will effectively all go away. But I can tell you, I mean, I've been on calls wall to wall for the last, better part of 8 or 9 days since this all transpired. We've also been on calls. We've been in trade group conversations. We've been on interviews. And when I say we, I mean the category, and specifically the beverage part of this category. We have been talking and screaming and shouting about regulation well before this language got put into place. And I think that is one of the things that I also try to stress in this. There are so many people in this industry who want to treat consumers with respect and with safety in mind, and are asking to be regulated, just simply not prohibited.
Yeah, you can see Christina and I nodding vigorously because we obviously interact a lot with not just you, but a large number of people who own products such as yours. And that's all they've been saying for years and years is please regulate us, please regulate us.
Yeah.
I was at a control state conference, a conference for the states where the government runs the liquor industry. I know you know that. I'm saying that for our listeners who may or may not know that. And yeah, one of the people on a panel was someone who owned a successful cannabis beverage brand. And he kept saying, you regulators in the audience, regulate me, let me know. We want this because, as you said, a better regulated industry helps everybody, consumer and producer alike.
Sure. Yeah. The funny thing is, right, like there are frameworks that exist already for this plant. If you look over to the aisle to sort of cannabis, I think, the idea that this can't be done, the idea that people who also have existed in channels, my sort of long tail vision of this, from the earliest days, right? And just for context, so my cousin and I started Artet as an idea, 2016, 2017. We were smoking a joint at Thanksgiving, and we were like, okay, it's really cold out here. It'd be pretty nice to be inside. It'd be pretty nice to be sitting at the table with our family, to be sitting around, a table with the people we love, around food we want to eat, rather than sneaking outside. And that was sort of the impetus for creating Artet. Again, the idea, I think, hit us in 2016. We took time to figure it out. But again, we were selling it in dispensaries in California. And people liked the product. People liked it when they discovered that it was something they could ask for, right? This was very novel at the time in certain ways, particularly for us, a beverage that is low potency, high volume, right, of liquid. And I bring this up to say that we never felt like we had a product market fit or a product consumer fit challenge, right? We knew we had something that resonated with people. What we struggled with was the channel we existed within. And my pie in the sky idea has always been around, whether it's THC from cannabis or THC from hemp, that regulations and frameworks will exist such that specialists in categories can actively handle this ingredient. So what does that mean? Obviously, beverage is an easy one, right? Where you see the Total Wines in places of the world who already do 21 plus carding when they sell products to people, doing the same thing for the liquid format of the product. Same with on-premise for bars and restaurants. What does that mean for ointments? Well, Sephora or whoever is good with, like, I'm showing my ignorance a little bit on, like, cosmetics, but like, the cosmetic side of cannabinoids can exist in those channels, so on and so forth, right? Dispensaries can sell flour, can sell vapes to people. There's no retail experience quite like a dispensary where you ask somebody on the side of the retailer to be an expert in things you eat, drink, smoke, inhale, give to your dog so it doesn't bark when the doorbell rings. You rub on your joints if you're, like, ailing from an injury, and so forth. So it's sort of at the moment a very naive way of thinking about commerce around this around this plant and around this substance, to say that everything needs to go through a dispensary. Now, a lot of people may not agree with me, but I do think that the easiest way to do this is, as you said, have people who are already regulating and controlling active ingredients treat it similarly, maybe amend some of the thinking and logic around it for whatever nuances equate to THC compared to, say, alcohol or whatever. But like, this exists. The capabilities to do this exist. Even in the world of alcohol, right? There are bands of what ABV can be for wine, for whiskey, and then how it's taxed for beer and so forth. So, there was a world in which people were drinking moonshine, and then they said, okay, well, actually, no, we need to rein that in. So there are so many parallels that have existed in history that tell me, and I think tell the people in our category who are trying to do this, that this is not an impossible ask or an impossible feat. It's just, I think, education, coordination, and a willingness to maybe on the margins make some sacrifices in what can be done in pursuit of what is allowed to sort of exist and thrive as a long-term future market.
Absolutely. Everything that you just said, I've been hearing from people, not just in the cannabis industry, but also in the beverage alcohol industry. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer how the alcohol industry has been handling it. I mean, it just makes sense to kind of follow those same, regulations and, just to make it work for everybody. So given these changes that can really disrupt the cannabis industry, how is Artet kind of preparing themselves to, go along with the changes? And what advice do you have for other brands to do the same?
Yeah. Well, I think first thing first, right? Because I can imagine there might be people listening to this who might, like, scream into the void or whatever, into their car, saying like, hemp is not cannabis or whatever, right? Like at a very sort of, again, just like definition level, THC from hemp and THC from cannabis, while they are the same exact chemical input, or not even, but naturally found compound, hemp has a legal federal framework for how it can exist, and cannabis has the state by states' right to legal cannabis market. So in many ways, the cannabis industry will be unaffected by this. They might look at this actually as a boon to their business, because many in the sort of regulated cannabis world have actually been very critical of hemp, because they feel like it's an unfair advantage. Now, there's a lot to dissect within the world of cannabis and the way that these state entities and things are run. I think, it's a very funny reality where states legalize cannabis and then put such punitive frameworks of taxation onto the industry. It's as if they're like, well, we legalized it, but how dare you participate? So the 27, 28, 33% effective excise taxes, like, as a brand, it's impossible to exist within it. As a retailer, it's virtually impossible to exist within it. And they have looked at hemp as sort of having an unfair advantage. And maybe that's true, right? There's a lot of people who say this sort of like one plant mentality. And again, I've always told people, like, I think it'd be really fascinating to be able to have our, we within the world of California, we've done really cool, strain specific cannabinoid versions of our beverages. We have a beautiful large format aperitif product, which is what we started with. And then we have kind of ready to drink sparkling canned spritzes. In both formats, we've done really cool things where we've gone and worked with small farmers, mom and pop, husband and wife teams with beautiful regenerative farms doing really cool outdoor stuff. And we can tell that story from seed, where they're growing the strains, flash freezing, doing really nice live resin extraction, all the way to the end product of our bottle. But that stuff's been landlocked to California because it's from a cannabis plant. So, in some regard, I think the cannabis side of all of this is unchanged. Now, the disappointment, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't really know if I'm answering the specific question you asked, but we have existing frameworks for our products in California, right? That's where we started in 2018 or 2019. And we have a whole host of dispensaries that sell Artet in Illinois because we've had a really great partner out there. Outside of those two markets, if any and all of this goes into effect, the majority of the United States will lose access to Artet. The majority of the United States will lose access to other brands like Artet, because most of the states also that have these hemp industries do not have legal cannabis markets. So if anything, the impact here is that there's going to just be a massive shock to supply, and very few will be able to continue to get access to these things. And, I think, again, we have a lot of examples in history of what happens when prohibition or prohibitionary style policies exist. People don't stop seeking things out. They unfortunately seek out worse or lesser quality, less safe alternatives. So to me, those are the impacts that I am more concerned about and worried about, because, sure, our business would contract pretty majorly overnight, but we would still have at least two markets where we can sell stuff and try to figure it out. It's more about all the people who don't have those things, right? Where risk of going to jail, where risk of losing your job or whatever it might be come into play because of how people perceive cannabis versus hemp.
Yeah, very well said. And let's hope that doesn't come to pass. That's really what we're hoping for here. You can tell we're certainly supporters of people like you in the industry and in the industry as a whole. Do you think we will see some kind of legislative correction in the next year? Like you said, this doesn't go into effect until November 13th, 2026. And you talk about how the industry is coordinating right now. And I know you guys have different groups and organizations already. Do you think there will be a success at the legislative level, at the federal level, that allows these products to not see the doomsday scenario that you unfortunately just described?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to predict the future because I tend to be pretty bad at it. Having said that, the sort of alternative, or kind of almost like the other side of the coin of like predicting the future, is sort of doing the work to make a future that you want. And what I can say at the very least is that there is so much coordination happening behind the scenes to put these frameworks in place, to have honest conversations, and more importantly, to bring as many of the necessary stakeholders to the table as possible, right? I think, again, taking the beverage part of all of this and kind of thinking about it in a vacuum, right? The hemp is a very big, broad plant with many different utilizations: industrial, personal consumption, drink, eat, smoke, you name it, right? In the context of beverage specifically, right? Like, we're a beverage brand, but I've always told people from day one that we are a beverage brand that uses THC as a core ingredient, not a THC brand that has a beverage. Very menial kind of, changing of language that some people might be like, well, what the hell does that mean? For me, it has always meant that it's a core ingredient, but we're a beverage company, right? So in the context of that, you have to think about, well, who are all the stakeholders in the world of beverage who need to be a part of these conversations? It's beverage distributors, it's big beverage players, so big alcohol. They all have to be a part of helping to shape and frame the permission structures for how this goes forward. And I think that's part of, at the very least, what's happening now, of getting people comfortable with that. There are a lot of people who've always believed that, right? Whether it's my family calling me because they can't help but be nervous for us, right? And they've believed in this. And, honestly, it's a very family-run company. My cousin and I founded it. Our grandmother did, the artwork for our bottle, and, is sort of probably our number one fan and consumer in a way. Right. We founded Artet to bring it to our family gathering. What I always tell them is that we always anticipated the participation of big alcohol in this category when we got started 6, 7, 8 years ago. I obviously didn't expect sort of part of that catalyst to be a kind of poison pill language that potentially shuts the entire category down. And of course, we're trying to undo that. But we have to be realistic, and we have to be strategic about aligning ourselves with people who, whether somebody likes it or not, has significant influence, has significant resources, and significant pull to shape policy. And that's what this is. Some people maybe will vehemently disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine, and it's totally well within the right of anybody in terms of how they look at hemp and how they look at THC and how they look at cannabis and what needs to happen here. But from our perspective as a beverage company, and from a lot of the other beverage companies or beverage distributors or people that I talk to, the sort of first step here is making sure that there are representatives within the entire ecosystem in the conversations, so that bills and things aren't being proposed to members in politics that have no basis in reality of how things move.
Well said. Well said. And obviously, like you mentioned, it takes all parts of the industry, and especially the distributors, as obviously you understand, the middle tier holds so much power in this industry. So to get the distributors on your side in this, and I hope they are, would be a big step forward for you guys.
Yeah, no, certainly. I can't speak for every one of them, but I can certainly say that the ones that work with us, and from things I've been reading, there is significant support from that middle tier, as you described, distributors.
That's really good to hear. And that's it. What I hear too when I go to these events or just speak to distributors on my own, everybody just seems to be very supportive of this industry. So with that, obviously we really truly need everybody in both industries to be participants in this to help, regulate cannabis. How can we best lobby our politicians, and in what ways can everybody reach out to support the cannabis beverage industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, right, the self-serving answer would be to tell people to continue to buy these products. Building a legitimate case for why and how tax structures from products like these can help drive revenue at the state or federal level. Of course, they're calling your senators and things and sort of asking them to help be part of undoing this. Those are all well and good, but the reason why I say that also purchasing product, the more money we have coming from the sales of our products, the more money we have to put into, which is admittedly going to be a very expensive endeavor as an industry to get the lobbying and get the education and get the awareness and get the frameworks in place so that on November 13th, we don't get there and are like, what the hell happened? Like, we need money. And that's just, it's an unavoidable reality in all of this, right? For all the people who do want to participate in it, there are still a lot of obstructionists with really deep pockets who are not willing to see this encroach on their opportunity to make money. And that's unfortunate, but again, that's just sort of the way the world works. And we can lament that reality, but I choose to exist within the framework of the game, if you will, and being able to have more resources as an industry so that we can continue to put more momentum behind exposure, awareness, et cetera. Like, that is a critical component of the strategy that needs to be deployed to achieve undoing this language. Certainly calling senators, calling your local Congress people, like, really useful as well. I think we also shouldn't discount the fact that we are approaching midterm elections, and in a way, the timing of this is really working in our favor, where I suspect and I anticipate there will be many people who are up for re-election or who are challenging an incumbent who have to take a position on this. And the more we can make this position something that politicians believe will sway their pathway to winning a seat, I also think will be a very motivating factor. So those are some of the things that we're working on. And then on top of it, as an industry, as more concrete language and frameworks come out about responsible operating within this industry, self-imposed safety regulations, et cetera, helping us just get that message further amplified, kind of spraying it out into the world, whether it's social, whether it's talking to people, it's going to be immense. Because in a way, this is a sprint, right? Like, we don't have forever, but and in a way, I actually think that is useful, right? This has been an existential back of brain reality from the moment any of us started, and now we're actually in the game, if you will. But yeah, those are some of the things that, just thinking about where we are today, that come to mind. I'm sure that thinking will evolve as smarter people and more tapped in people, frankly, in all of this kind of present clarity around next steps. So some of it is like, stay tuned, but also, again, right, the easiest thing in the meantime is allowing us as an industry to beef up our coffers to fight for this.
Yeah, listeners, please take Xander's advice to heart. Contact your local legislators. Tell them that you want to see this industry rescued from the brink here. And please continue to buy these products and consume them. I know I will be. I'm a fan of them. That's the best way. Money talks. And that's kind of what I'm hoping at the end of the day, is there's just too much money to be made here for them to just shut down an industry. But like you said, there's other parties that make money when this industry suffers. So that, hearing you say that actually makes me a little bit more nervous for the future. But hopefully, again, there's enough money to be made here.
I think that's where the sort of ends justify the means thinking comes into play. Of, we have to get those people at the table and figure out how to cut them in. And you can fight that if you want, but that's a much harder, much longer, more sort of damaging, I think, approach as far as trying to protect people who are existing within it already, who are maybe, smaller players or mom and pop players or whatever it is. I think those people will have a lot more long-term pain if that's the approach that this industry takes, rather than saying, okay, we don't have to love everything about how we get to where we're going, but like, if we still get to wake up every day and work and run our companies and make an impact in people's lives, and like, all right, well, that's worth something.
Yeah. Well said. And so consumers can know what they're buying when they buy Artet. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the brand, what you guys sell? Also, I love that you guys were founded over smoking a joint with your cousin at Thanksgiving. The amount of times I did that myself and did not come up with a business plan, I'm now kicking myself. My cousins and I could have launched something. Oh my
I know,
God.
right? Well, yeah, yeah. So, Artet, we make THC beverages for the cocktail occasion. So, our flagship product is a uh, large format aperitif style product, kind of a French or Italian liqueur. It's a really lovely blend of botanicals. Um, I always tell people we made it with a frankly selfish endeavor in mind, right? Which was how do we bring weed to the dinner table?
Mm.
We weren't we knew we're not going to smoke inside. We weren't going to infuse the turkey or the gravy. Um, so a beverage felt very believable and interesting and exciting as far as um, how to do this. And again, I'm talking about some of this in a way that sounds almost at this point so 101. Um, but when we were doing this, it didn't really exist, and people thought we were crazy when we were
Mm.
telling them what we wanted to do, and we were getting laughed out of rooms from anybody and everyone who tried to help us make it. But we really believed in it. We were really convicted in the idea that once you presented people with an alternative way to consume THC in a format that was familiar, a lot of the perceptions around plant that maybe were more associated with the form factor of like smoking or something, that would go away and you could recontextualize it. We also come from a family that loves to drink, that loves to socialize. So to kind of make a cocktail style product was really just, again, interesting to us. So our primary product is a large format aperitif. You can enjoy it on the rocks. You can enjoy it as the base of a highball or as a really beautiful cocktail. And then we have ready to drink spritzes. So our spritzes are sort of taking that idea of a cocktail not having to start with alcohol as the primary ingredient and just canning it and making it a little bit more easy and on the go. So all of our canned spritzes are sort of 2 shots of our aperitif that we then finish with really lovely fresh juices, additional botanicals, extracts, and sparkling water. No artificial sweeteners, no added sugar, just sort of the flavors of the ingredients and the sort of depth and roundness of juices to kind of make something that feels elegant, that still feels drinkable on a regular basis, and that feels sessionable, right? I think a lot of products in this category, and there's no shame or no knock, it's just a different approach than what we want, have a lot of sugar. And for us, right, we exist in this mid to low dose, which ultimately may become the potency of the land if we can do what we're doing.
What is the milligram in
advocate for
yours?
this. Our flagship aperitif is 2.5 milligrams per serving. Each bottle has 15 servings. By the way, just a plug for some of the safety regulations and things. Our bottles are child resistant, so push and twist cap. It looks beautiful, but it's still a push and twist. I can pull up endless emails of people who reach out to us saying our bottle is broken. And then we say, no, you have to push and twist. So again, right, like the fear of, well, we don't want the children to get it in the DNA of our product.
Good.
We have a stainless steel shot glass that helps people readily identify a single serve. Again, once you understand it, you can kind of pour as you feel comfortable, but we are doing all the things up front to ensure an enjoyable, safe, and consistent experience from the moment you engage with our brand. So 2.5 milligrams per 50 ml. We do have a double strength version, which is the same math, just at 5 milligrams per serving. And then our cans are 5 milligrams of THC and 5 milligrams of CBD. So again, right, like if you want to have one, beautiful. If you want to have 2 or 3, some people have higher tolerances, great. We didn't want you to max out on sugar and calories and carbs in your journey to doing so. So everything is 6 grams of sugar or less, 40 to 35 calories, etc. But really fresh, really delicious. Taking, as I said, more of a cocktail approach to the idea of THC and where and how it can show up in social beverage kind of consumption spaces.
Yeah, that's really smart that I heard you talk about coming with the shot glass that allows people to understand what the correct serving size is. Because again, as someone who consumes these beverages and does understand serving sizes, because I'm in the weeds of it myself, I get sent products. I get sent the 750 ml of a THC beverage, and I put it out for my friends, and I see them overserve themselves all the time. I don't allow them to drink it. Once they overserve it, I point out the mistake they've made. But yeah, people don't understand what the serving sizes are, especially like you said in the larger format. So that's very good to hear. Very smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think again, right, the goal as pioneers in this industry is to try as best, it's blocking and tackling on every possible concern or anxiety that exists within the context of making this normalized. Doesn't sound sexy when you frame it that way, but that is something that we've always understood was sort of the responsibility to ourselves, even if we wanted this thing to be successful. Like we have the recipe, we know how to make this. We can bring Artet to Thanksgiving for the rest of time. If we wanted to show it and share it with other people, if we wanted to also, one of the things that I'm so proud of and I love is seeing how well regarded our products are with the on-premise in the on-premise occasion, right? We have amazing bartenders and mixologists and people coming up with incredible ways to serve Artet, from NA Boilermakers where it's a shot of Artet and an NA beer to beautiful cocktails, and just seeing how intuitively they understand how to use it, and how some of these little things like the shot glass or whatever just kind of immediately then it's like, oh, like this is like an Amaro. Great. Let me put it next to Campari and Cynar. And for that, I'm like, to even have you just put us in that category of brands and products, things that I love to still enjoy myself, is sort of a pinch me moment. But the intention has always been, I've never, I'm not actually coining this because it's sort of a corny thing to say, and I'm sure someone else has said it, but like we have always said that like our goal is to just help on first use confidence, right? If you like, the mind is the most powerful drug as far as I'm concerned, and people for the most part that we talk to have been like, well, I don't touch THC, like you don't want to see me when I'm stoned, right? Or they're like, I had an edible in college and I don't even know that I've come back from that trip yet. And you're like, yeah, that probably sucked and that was probably terrifying, and it's because people were experimenting without legal frameworks and without science and without technology that exists. So all of those things have been paramount to whether we would ever go to the next phase of bringing Artet to market. It works as advertised every time. First drop to last drop, same potency. You know how to identify a serving. You know how to build confidence. You know how to get comfortable with it. You know how to find your perfect pour. And whether you stay at that 2.5 milligram range or you scale up, like it's all because you feel comfortable with how to let the product enter into your life, if you will, right? So I think I didn't know that it would maybe become one of the things long term that we have to sort of use as our reason to exist, but it just made sense in the early days to have some of these things as a part of it, because telling somebody like, hey, I make a THC aperitif, like in 2017, people were like, first of all, what's an aperitif? I'm like, cool. So now I'm explaining two things here. So we just had to like help demystify.
Absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you again to Xander for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really appreciate you having me on and letting me hopefully bring some people up to speed on sort of what we're dealing with here and what the journey ahead is for the rest of now until November 13th, 2026.
We hope so too. As you can tell, we're fans of the category. We're supporters of the category. So we're pulling for you guys, and anything we can do to help too, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help. And thanks to everyone who tuned into this episode of On and Off. We appreciate all of our listeners. Please do join us next time when we'll discuss yet another fascinating topic that spans the retail and restaurant worlds. Until then, cheers. If you enjoyed the On and Off podcast, please hit the subscribe button. Also, you can find more great content at cheersonline.com and beveragedynamics.com, including recipes, product reviews, and interviews with the movers and shakers of the beverage alcohol industry. You can also sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter for both publications on our websites. Cheers!